Hello, welcome to Sterlo's wrap-up. That time of the week again, a second last instalment following preliminary final football, and great to have the man himself alongside me, Peter Sterling. Hello.
Hello, James. We have our grand final. So I've got to say, even though the margins were 16 and 8 points on the weekend, I thought pretty comprehensive victories to the two best defensive teams in our premiership, and also I don't think it's any coincidence that the sides who had the week off prevailed.
Absolutely. Two pretty dour matches compared to the six we had leading in. We've been spoilt so far in the final series. Let's head back to Amy Park Friday night, the Storm and the Sharks. We spent so much time talking about this great rivalry. There was a bit of tension in this matchup, but with no Paul Gallen, perhaps not as much as we expected. But in the end, 22-6, the Storm on track to defend their title.
Yeah, no Paul Gallen, no Wade Graham and no Josh Dugan, and I think the omission of those players or their unavailability really hurt the Sharks, who were good for the first 15 minutes of this game in regards to they got into the arm wrestle to some degree, but then when the Melbourne Storm started to gain the ascendancy, it was over by half-time. It was 20-0 at the break. No side in a final at Amy Park is going to come from behind conceding that kind of margin.
No way.
And even though they tried very hard in the second half, and they threw the football around, they actually realised that they had to do something a little bit different because the Melbourne Storm defence was just too good. There was only one winner from a long way out in this game, and it was the Storm, who went through and continued a great record over the last decade when it comes to finals games and getting into grand finals.
Brodie Croft looking right at home in that number 7 jersey too, isn't he?
I thought he was one of the stars of the night, and mentioned a few times that it's been very unusual with the Melbourne Storm this year that they hadn't settled on their number 7 until very late in the year. Now, we know young Brodie Croft, he started the season in the top grade, basically got dropped after about 5 weeks, went back and had to continue to learn his trade, and was brought back in late in the season. Now, Jerome Hughes was there, who may feature on the weekend in a different position. And he's come back in and he looks really confident, looks really controlled in his play. And I've described him before as a traditional halfback. And by playing the role the way that he does, it allows Cameron Munster to play with a much more ad-lib and more freedom to his game. So Croft, I think he's done a really good job in taking that early setback, going back and working hard on his game and coming back into the team as the kind of halfback needed at this stage of the season. And Craig Bellamy, I think, would be delighted with the evolving of his game.
Craig Bellamy would be delighted with that. Won't be delighted with the fact that at this stage, Billy Slater will not be featuring in the grand final. His farewell match for a shoulder charge, grade 1, which sees him suspended for 2 games. But we know he's only got 1 game left, and that's the grand final. Yeah. He's going to go to the judiciary Tuesday night to plead his case, Pete. First of all, was it a shoulder charge in your eyes?
Yes. Yeah, it's a shoulder charge. Look, I know there's a little bit of contact maybe down with the hand or the wrist before the shoulder comes in. But you see Billy, he does brace the shoulder and drives in. So on that score, it is a shoulder charge.
OK, they brought in the big guns to fight the case. Do they have a chance of getting it overturned?
Look, I think they do. Sentiment won't be involved. They cannot go and plead a case based on the fact, look, this guy's a really nice guy. No. And I don't know whether a Melbourne Storm representative coming out and saying it's like, shooting Bambi actually helped the situation, because sentiment isn't involved here. They've got to go in and present a case as to why technically Billy Slater should be able to play after that kind of contact. Now, to me, the difference is that when the shoulder charge rule was changed, it was more about the one-on-one straight hit. And that's where most of the force is exerted, and that's where you get that whiplash effect. In this instance, it's a perpendicular contact. So you've got Billy coming across. To me, in that kind of fashion, it really takes out contact with the head. It's almost impossible to get contact with the head coming across sideways. Now, also with that kind of shoulder charge, there's there's nowhere near as much force, in my opinion, than coming straight on to a attacker and a defender. So if they can technically say to the guys that this, look, it is a shoulder charge, but based on the merits of this compared to other ones that look much worse and are much worse, and to me why the rule was changed, maybe they might get some semblance of a chance that he could be found not guilty based on the fact that it is not your bad shoulder charge, for want of a better term.
And there's a few examples going around out there at the moment too, including Wanga Blake back in round 17, which there's a lot of similarities between the two, and he wasn't even charged at the time. So you dare say a lot of those
He
examples...
wasn't penalised that night.
Yeah.
So, there was no...
Was there a case for a sin binning there or a penalty try?
No penalty try, no. The sin binning, yes. To be honest, James, I'd have preferred to see Billy Slater sin bin for a professional foul there.
That's it.
And that would have been it. And I think that might have placated most people as well. An offence would have been paid. And as it turned out, that was a crucial time in the game. That was, after 15 minutes?
Yeah.
If Cronulla possibly had have taken advantage of that extra man in that period of time, it might have changed the course of the game. And also, it's with Billy not there, the side that he's transgressed against actually gets the benefit. Now, I know there's no game next week, but if it's one of those situations where we have said in the past there's no benefit for the team that actually was fouled. Now, in this case, I think a sin binning that 10 minutes would have been something that would have been embraced by the Sharks.
Can they win without Billy Slater, the Melbourne Storm, in a grand final against the Roosters?
They can. In fact, I think they probably cover... Now, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but I think they cover the loss of Billy Slater better than maybe the Roosters would in regards to Cooper Cronk if he does not play. Jerome Hughes has come in and played some really good football in the past. Now, again, I'm making the assumption that he will be used as the number one. He's very well versed with that role. He's played there on a number of occasions this season. He knows what goes on in front with this Melbourne Storm. So they can win. It's just a lot harder.
OK, well, so number 2 in the competition gets through to the grand final. Saturday night, Allianz Stadium, a record crowd for any sport at the ground. The last rugby league match at the SFS, 44,380 were there to see the Roosters. Team number 1, the minor premiers, get through 12 points to 4. The best offensive team in the competition winning and shutting down the team with the best attack, Pete, the South Sydney Rabbitohs.
Pretty fair effort, wasn't it? And I think that pretty much sums up the game when you consider that the Roosters kept the opposition trialists in this game, which shows that their defence ruled. They scored 3 tries themselves, a couple of great efforts from Joseph Manu to get the ball to Blake Ferguson, for him to catch it and stay in the field to play. Young Momorowski here, what a night for him. Brought in for Latrell Mitchell, did his job really well. So in the end, look, it wasn't a game that rose to any great heights. I loved the atmosphere of it. And I guess the closeness of the scores kept the crowd involved, but 44,000 fans out there, the night throbbed. Awesome. It was pulsating. It was a wonderful atmosphere. The game never quite lived up to that, but I say the closeness of the scores certainly did help. But again, I think the Roosters, whilst the scoreline wasn't comfortable, their defence always pretty much looked as though they had South Sydney covered. Look, South Sydney, for a couple of reasons, sometimes you can turn up and it's just your attack just doesn't quite gel. Your timing's out for whatever reason. But in this instance, it was also aided by the fact that the insistent and excellence of the Roosters' defence contributed to that for South Sydney. So they weren't at their best on the night, but it wasn't all their own fault.
It didn't help, that Cooper Cronk, their star halfback, was nursing a severe shoulder problem for more than a half of football. The question is now, you've had rotator cuff injuries before. Will he be fit for the grand final, Peter Sterling?
Well, I don't know the extent of the injury, but when they describe it as severe, to me, when they're talking rotator cuff, that means that there's a tear. Now, if he's torn his rotator cuff, then I don't think he can play. And as I say, I had 3 operations, but we're going back a lot of years now, and certainly, the rehab and even the operation that I had back then, it is much better these days. Now, I'm not saying that, obviously Cooper Cronk, we're not talking surgery at the moment, but if there's a tear there, we are talking about that at some stage. So if it's a different kind of rotator cuff injury apart from a tear, then I think it's possible that he plays. But if there's a tearing of it, then, the function is taken away from you. You can't get your arm up there. And as a halfback, that's restrictive, as we saw in the second half, with your passing, with your kicking, with so much part of your game. Now, he's such a key member, but Trent Robinson has to make the decision. Getting him out there with a fairly low percentage in regards to fitness, is that better than having somebody else come in just for his voice to be there and just to know the instructions that he has to put together?
Well, Gus said it in commentary on Saturday night. That second half, it was almost like Cooper was willing his team home verbally. He was setting things up defensively, making sure he was out of the line, trying not to be a target. So are you better, as you say, with a half fit, a quarter fit Cooper Cronk or someone incoming on the big stage?
I'd say no when you consider the opposition and you consider that it would be for 80 minutes, you would imagine.
They know his game plan
up against the
pretty well
Melbourne
too,
Storm.
team.
So, but look, again, just going back to the Roosters' defence, it was superb and will need to be again against Melbourne. And to me, it was kind of highlighted with this period in the second half. Now, Cooper Cronk, we know, severely restricted, and he gets his kick charge down here. Well, he actually kicks it straight into Dean Britt, but you know he's not fluid in his motion. Then Joseph Manu picks that up, brings it out 20 metres. Now, that was 13 minutes into the second half. For the next 7 or 8 minutes, they did not get out of their own half. They didn't get over halfway. And it was kind of brought to an end by this great tackle from Joseph Manu from a scrum win. Now, they had to absorb all of this pressure through to this period here where Manu slides, grabs Alex Johnson, throws him over the sideline. That kind of brought an end to the dominance and the field position for South Sydney. And it was probably 6 or 7 minutes after that, they actually got down the other end and scored some points. But that period of time there, to me, when you look back during the course of games and you say, well, that was key and, you know, the final score line was severely influenced by that, that 7-minute period there, I think it didn't break South Sydney's spirit for sure, but I think it got through. If the Roosters had been scored upon there, they may not have gone on to win that game.
So Luke Keary, did you see enough from him in that second half to know he can take control of the game? And would it be a Sean O'Sullivan you bring in, or perhaps someone else, maybe a Mitch Orbison or Ryan Madison to come in and partner?
Look, I don't know. I thought Mitch Orbison was going to play in the centres on the weekend. But Luke Keary was fantastic. Yep. You know, he took over the reins, and especially in the kicking game. And he got that so right. Especially in putting pressure on the back three. They were difficult kicks for the South Sydney players to be taking. The short kicking game was excellent. Now, that's normally Cooper Cronk. Yep. So for Luke Keary to step up and show, yep, I've got this covered, guys, it also brings enormous confidence through the rest of the team as well. Now, in regards to who might go alongside Luke Keary, I could see a Ryan Madison, who's played 5/8 before, being heavily considered. But we know Sean O'Sullivan is a quality player. He's only had the one game for the Roosters at NRL level this year. That was back against the Gold Coast. He did well that night, but this is a different ball game, obviously. Look, Trent Robinson, he knows the kind of game that he needs to put out there to defeat the Melbourne Storm. Whether Madison is best suited to that, I don't know. Whether O'Sullivan comes in and plays more of the halves role but allows Luke Keary to take complete control, I don't know. It's a very, very different grand final week, isn't it? Because we don't know about two leading players as to whether they're going to play a role.
The two best storylines of the week, aren't they?
They are.
Leading into grand final, you've got Cooper Cronk against his old club that he won a premiership with last year.
Not only against his old club, but up against a young man who he was his apprentice there for a couple of years and stepped into that jersey, which was so difficult. There's so much pressure once Cooper Cronk retired as to who takes over that number 7 jersey and keeps it. It is a fantastic storyline. It would be a better storyline if Cooper is actually fit enough to play to actually take on Brodie Croft and the Melbourne Storm head-to-head.
And Billy Slater gets a farewell game. How soon do the Roosters have to make a decision? I mean, they know the severity of this injury, and as you say, it's a big hole to fill. How quickly do you need to make that call that he will or won't be?
Look,
there?
I think Trent Robinson knows now which way he would go. I think coming into this match, he would have... He said after the weekend when we interviewed him about game plans for opposition teams. And he said, there's a game plan for every team that you play. Now, I've got no doubt that he already knows how to approach the Melbourne Storm and to be successful. And I think in the back of his mind, he would know that that would be best served by either a Ryan Madison, a Mitch Orbison or a Sean O'Sullivan. He's got everything crossed that Cooper Cronk's injury isn't as severe as the call of severe and that he might be able to take his place. But I think he's got a pretty good idea now. I think Momirovski was in the side fairly early last week as well, despite the fact the general consensus was that Orbison would play in the centres. Whilst the young man mightn't have been told that until late, I've got no doubt Trent Robinson knew which way he was going early in the week. OK,
so it's the grand final exclusively live on Sunday night right here on 9. A big day. Make sure you join us we've got Sports Sunday at 10 a.m. and then live from the ground from 11 with the Sunday Footy Show. But Pete, I know a lot's going to change between now and Sunday, but I want your winner and I want your Clive Churchill medalist as well.
Well, a lot's going to change. I hope that Billy Slater plays in this game. I hope that Cooper Cronk plays in this game. But regardless of that, I will tip the Roosters based on the defence that I saw the other night. And I'm going to go, my Clive Churchill medal winner is James Tedesco.
Okay.
I think
that'd cap a lovely year for him, wouldn't it?
Well, it's, yeah. And it'll be the next step for him into an Australian jersey. And that would cap a fantastic year if he can win Origin, win a premiership, and get an Australian jersey. That'd be something.
Sure would. Peter Sterling, as always, a pleasure.
Thanks, James.
Our second last Sterlo's wrap up for 2018. This time next week, we'll be chatting about the grand final result. Who won, who was hot, who wasn't. Either way, we'll catch you then.